The job offer came after a particularly rough patch in my life. Breakup, job loss and mountain debt. So when I saw the listing for a living caretaker on a remote apple orchard in Missouri, I took it. The post was vague. Caretaker needed for orchard property. Light maintenance, overnight presence required, lodging included. No phone signal, no smoking. The pay was decent and the cabin was included, and I figured a few months of solitude might be good for me. I didn't even meet the owner in person. I just got an envelope in the mail with a single key, a set of printed instructions, and a hand-scribbled note that read, "Do not move the Scarecrow, ever." The orchard was beautiful in a way. Endless rows of knotted apple trees, gnarled and half rotten from decades of wind and rot. The air smelled sweet, but with an edge like vinegar and iron. The only building on the property was a squat cabin made of weathered pine, sitting a few yards from the tree line. There were no other houses for miles, and at the far end of the orchard, just barely visible from the cabin window, stood the Scarecrow. It was huge, easily over 6 feet tall, mounted on a crooked post that leaned slightly. The body was stuffed with straw and wore a faded brown suit jacket and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over its burlap face. Its arms drooped like broken wings. It never moved, at first. 3 nights in, I woke up to the sound of something thumping against the side of the cabin. Soft, repetitive, like a loose shutter swinging in the wind. I got up, grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside. No wind, no loose shutter, but the Scarecrow. It looked different, closer, still distant, still technically in the orchard, but I swear it was maybe 10 feet closer than before. I chalked it up to paranoia and went back inside. The thumping didn't return. 2 nights later, it was even closer, not by a lot, just closer. It now stood at the edge of the nearest row of trees. I pulled out the printed instructions I'd been given. They were short: keep the generator full, check for broken branches after storms, store apples in the cellar, lock the cabin door at night, and do not move the Scarecrow. That last one kept echoing in my head. I didn't touch it, didn't go near it, didn't even speak about it out loud. On the 6th night, a storm rolled in. Thunder, wind, and rain that fell sideways. I lit a fire and curled up with an old novel. Around 1:12 AM, the generator cut out. I grabbed a lantern and I stepped outside to restart it. The orchard looked different at night. The trees, usually knotted and still, swayed in unnatural rhythms. Some twisted towards me like they were listening. I hurried to the generator shed, restarted the motor, and as I turned back, I glanced towards the orchard. The Scarecrow was now at the edge of the yard. I froze. It shouldn't have been able to move, and yet there it was. Arms drooping lower than before, head tilted, hat gone, exposing a burlap face that looked newly stitched. Fresh thread, dark seams, something glistened where a mouth might be. That night, I locked the cabin tight, blocked the windows with spare planks, and still I couldn't sleep. At 3:33 AM, I heard it. Footsteps on the porch. Slow, dragging, then a tap. Not knocking, scratching. I grabbed the hatchet from the fireplace and crept towards the door. The porch light flickered, then went out. I held my breath. No sound. Until the sound of fingernails dragging across the cabin walls returned. I backed away, didn't sleep, didn't blink. When daylight broke, I finally stepped outside. The Scarecrow was gone, at least, I thought so, until I found it leaning against the cabin itself, arms dangling at his sides like wet rope. The burlap face had changed. Now there were glass eyes sewed in, not doll eyes, human. The last one was hazel, the same colour as mine. Its stitched mouth was pulled into a crooked smile, and on its chest, something had pinned a Polaroid photo. It was me, sleeping. I tried to leave. I packed everything, jumped into the car, but it wouldn't start. The battery was drained. I ran to the cabin, tried the landline. It was dead. The generator was mangled, twisted, torn open like a bear had gone through it. I ran to the cellar, hoping there might be a radio. Instead, I found photos, hundreds of them, nailed to the walls, all Polaroids, all of previous caretakers, sleeping, screaming, running. Each one paired with a scarecrow. Each scarecrow had their face, sewn in burlap, and behind the photos, carved into the walls, there was writing, "The land must watch. The land must know who walks it. The land remembers." I barricaded the doors, piled furniture, nailed windows shut. I set firewood traps at each entrance, and as night fell, the orchard came alive. Rustling, whispers, laughter. At midnight sharp, the scratching returned, but now it came from above, from the roof. The boards in the ceiling creaked. I held the hatchet, breathing hard. Then a voice from outside the cabin whispered, "Sleep, you must sleep. We can't wear you while you're awake." I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke up, it was daylight. The door was wide open, the cabin was untouched, and across the orchard, the scarecrow stood once more, upright, distant, back on its post, but now it wore my clothes. Its face, mine, stitched perfectly, expression twisted, smiling, and the next caretaker should be arriving any day now. My grandfather's death hit the family harder than we expected. He's always been a distant figure, quiet, stern, the kind of man who stared out the windows for hours without blinking. He ran a small farm in rural Nebraska and lived alone after my grandmother passed. We rarely visited, and when we did, he barely spoke unless it was to criticise something or hand out instructions like commands from a forgotten war. When he died, he left the farmhouse to me, not to my mother, not to my uncles, to me, a 27-year-old freelance artist with no farming experience and zero desire to inherit a plot of decaying land in the middle of nowhere. But something about it called to me. The farmhouse sat at the end of a long gravel road, surrounded by rust-coloured cornfields and rolling hills. Paint peeled from the walls, the porch sagged like a wary back, and wind turbines dotted the horizon like silent sentinels. Inside, the house smelled like mothballs and rotting paper. Faded photographs lined the walls, all of them stern faces, no smiles, just grim stares, as if daring you to forget them. And the weirdest part, there was no basement. Despite the house's age and region, the floors were solid. No trapdoor, no staircase, no cellar entrance. I found it odd, especially since the old man often made cryptic comments like, "Some things are better left below ground." At the time, I thought it was just a metaphor. I was wrong. The first week I stayed there, I began finding small things out of place. The door to the attic, which was always nailed shut, was ajar one morning. My toothbrush missing, later found on the dining room table. Drawers rearranged. Once, I came downstairs and every chair was turned to face the window, like an audience waiting for something to arrive. Then there was the knocks. Soft, muffled, from beneath the floorboards. At first, I thought maybe raccoons have gotten into the crawl space, but the house sat on a slab foundation. There was nowhere for anything to be. One night, I dropped a screwdriver while assembling a shelf and watched it roll across the hardwood kitchen floor and disappear. Gone. I got on my hands and knees and tapped along the boards. One plank near the old cast iron stove sounded hollow. I wedged it loose and found a ring pull embedded into the frame. A trap door. It's not in the blueprints, not in any records, hidden beneath generations of waxed oak and dust. I grabbed a lantern and pried it open. A narrow, vertical shaft descended into darkness. A wooden ladder embedded into the wall. The air that rose from it was freezing and wet, smelling of iron and mildew and something else. Old blood. I climbed down slowly, the lantern flickering against the stone wall. At the bottom was a room, carved from rock, perfectly square. No doors, no windows, just shelves and dozens of boxes, each labelled by year, each year a name. They weren't family names, they were strangers. Some were handwritten, some typed. The oldest went back to 1912. Each box contained strange things, locks of hair, crude dolls made from cloth and twine, jars of teeth, rolled parchment covered in symbols I couldn't decipher, and photos, grainy, grey, showing people in agony, distorted by light, their eyes scratched out with something metallic. The most recent box, 2011, the label, Sarah Lynn Beckett. That was my mother's maiden name. I dropped the box, footsteps echoed from above, but I was alone. I climbed the ladder fast, sealed the trapdoor and pushed the stove back over it. I didn't sleep. Every hour I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Same rhythm, same location, always from beneath me. The next morning I drove into town. I spoke to an old librarian who remembered my grandfather. Her eyes went cold the moment I mentioned the house. "You need to leave. They say your family made a deal long ago, before the war, something about keeping the land alive. That farm should have failed 100 times over, but the soil never dried, never froze, crops always grew even in drought." She hesitated. "They say he gave it blood. Once a decade, always someone forgotten." I asked her if she believed it. She didn't answer, just handed me a book from behind the counter, an old farming ledger, inside written in red ink, "The land must be fed." That night, the power went out, the temperature dropped 20 degrees, and I saw the shape, standing at the edge of the field, a figure, tall and narrow, with skin that glowed like frostbitten candle wax, no eyes, just an open mouth gaping wide and dripping soil. It stepped towards the house. I grabbed my lantern. The trapdoor was open. Inside, the basement was glowing faintly red, the shelves empty, all boxes gone, except one, on the ladder, with my name on it, 2025 Marcus Eli Beckett. Inside, a mirror and a note. "You must choose, bury yourself or offer another." I don't remember the next few hours, only that when the sun rose, I was standing in the cornfield, hands covered in dirt, and something new was buried beneath the Scarecrow post. A box, labelled with someone else's name, the librarian's. I don't live there anymore. I rented it out to someone last month, a college student, quiet, paid in cash. She asked if the place had a basement. I smiled and said, "No, just floorboards." And every 10 years, I return, because the land must be fed. It was supposed to be a quick detour. My girlfriend Claire and I were driving from Kansas City to Iowa for her cousin's wedding. We'd left late, missed our turnoff, and found ourselves somewhere off Route 65, surrounded by rolling farmland and empty dirt roads that weren't on the GPS. It was late afternoon when we saw the detour sign. Road closed, flood damage, detour ahead. Problem was, the detour looped us 20 miles out of the way. We were running low on gas and sunlight. Claire, always the braver one, pointed to the cornfield on the left. If we cut straight across, it will save us half an hour. We could see the roof of a barn in the distance, probably part of the same farm, just a straight shot through 100 yards of corn. I wasn't thrilled, but I followed her anyway. We should have reached the other side in 10 minutes. We never did. The rows were taller than expected, 8 feet high, dense, thick with sweet smelling pollen and sharp leaves that hissed against our clothes as we passed. At first, we laughed. It felt adventurous, a golden maze glowing in the sunset. But 10 minutes passed, then 20, and we still hadn't reached the other side. I stopped. We should be there by now. Claire nodded, biting her lip. We turned around to go back, but the entrance was gone. Just more rows, identical, endless. That's when we heard it. Faint, metallic, rhythmic. Creak, creak, creak. Like a weathered porch swing moving slowly in the breeze. We moved towards the sound, thinking maybe it was near the barn. But it didn't get louder. It followed us. Always the same volume, always just out of sight. The light began to dim, sunset bleeding away. The corn turned darker, more golden brown than green. Claire checked her phone. No signal, no GPS. I tried mine. Same result. We've just got to follow the rows east, I said. We'll hit road eventually. So we walked. The sun dropped below the horizon faster than it should have. The sky turned a deep navy, stars flickered. No moon, just cold, endless dark. We used our phones for light, still walking, still surrounded by exact same rows. No gaps, no variation. Every now and then we'll find a crow feather on the ground, just one, placed perfectly between rows. Then the noise started. Whispers, faint, wrong. The whispers would stop, would walk, the whispers would return, and somewhere behind us, still steady, creak, creak, creak. Hours passed, then we saw it. A small clearing in the corn. In the centre, an old-fashioned farm bell on a wooden post, rusty, covered in dried vines. A note was nailed below it, handwritten. Do not ring. Claire laughed nervously. What is this? Blair Witch? I touched the bell. It was warm. Too warm. Like it had been rung recently. I backed away and re-entered the corn. Behind us, something moved. Not footsteps. Rustling. Like something crawling along the tops of the stalks, following. Eventually, exhaustion set in. We made a nest of jackets and tried to sleep. When I woke up, it was still dark. Claire was sitting up, wide eyes. It's been too long. I checked my phone. 1:38 a.m. Then again, 1:38 a.m. Then again, still 1:38 a.m. Claire held up her phone. Same time. She turned it off and on. Same. I looked at the sky. The stars hadn't moved. We stood and started walking again. That's when we noticed the rows had changed. They were tighter. The space between stalks had narrowed, barely enough to squeeze through. Every few minutes would pass another clearing, each one slightly different. A scarecrow with no face, just a mirror nailed to the head. A shovel stuck in the earth with a ribbon tied to the handle. A pile of animal bones arranged in a perfect spiral. Then we heard the bell, clear, sharp, once. And then something behind us stood up. It ran on all fours, but it wasn't an animal. Too long, too fast, skin stretched like tarp. No face, just a gaping red hole where the head should have been. We ran blindly through the corn, branches slashing at our arms and faces. Then we saw the barn. the same one we aimed for hours ago, lit faintly by a lantern swaying on a hook. We threw ourselves inside and slammed the door. Inside, empty, except for rows and rows of mirrors, floor to ceiling, and in every reflection, we weren't alone. We backed into a corner, every mirror now showing a different version of us. One had Claire smiling, eyes black. Another showed me, cut open from throat to stomach. Then the lantern dimmed and the corn began to whisper. One final mirror lit up. It showed us, right now, in real time, and someone standing behind us. We turned. There was nothing there. We turned back, and in the mirror, we were gone. We woke up in the car, daylight, parked along the highway. No memory of returning. Gas tank full, but the clock on the dash, still read 1:38 a.m.